Okay, I want to do a quick review of Novlr, which is a web-based novel writing software. So the big picture here is that Novlr is a non-linear web-based writing environment, which means that everything is done through your web browser. You go to the Novlr website, you load it up. All of the writing is stored on their servers in the back end, and then you just get that delivered to whatever device you want. Pretty interesting that way. It's a service model billing, which means that you get a subscription fee. You don't get kind of that traditional, hey, let me give you $100 and I get this software and I keep it forever. It's more like, I pay my monthly fee or I pay my annual fee and I get access to this service. That's not so great, but I think there are some things that, even though I would normally shy away from that model, make me think that Novlr has some things willing to that I'd be willing to put up with, to get some features. A lot of those features are based around the psychology of writing. The Novlr people say that it is created by writers and for writing, and I kind of believe that after seeing some of these features. It is optimized for manuscript production. It doesn't have a whole lot of layout features. I think that that might be a deal breaker for a couple of people, but I don't think that it's a deal breaker for most people. So if that's something that you feel like you might be interested, let's go a little bit deeper. Right. So this is the Novlr view. This is kind of what it would look like if you went into Novlr. You can kind of see on the top here, this is the name of the test project that I'm working on. Here are all the chapters. I started writing in these. I do like the fact that Novlr lets you name these. You can just see the numbers. You can even see, the 2.1 because it's nested inside of this first chapter or the second chapter about Alaska. When I say that Novlr is a non-linear writing environment, I mean that these chapters can be reordered. It can get these little lines here and I can drag them all around. So you can work on the chapters in any order you want to. And that's a really, really helpful thing that's more difficult to do in a more traditional writing environment like Microsoft Word, Google Docs, those kinds of things. They're really more set up for you to begin at the beginning and then end at the end. You've also got some notes organization down here. I don't think that this is as structured. I don't think that this is as feature rich as something like Scrivener. And I use that kind of Scrivener organization a lot. I put in my research and everything. I find that super, super helpful because sometimes I have more than a couple novel projects going on. I might walk away from a novel project for 2, 3 weeks, maybe even a month or two if I'm just feeling really stumped and I feel like I need to come back to it with fresh eyes. And I think, you know, amateur writers or writers who are just starting with their first novel might not appreciate that as much. But the thing is that, you think in the moment, oh, I'm going to remember who all my characters are. I'll remember all the locations. It's all going to make sense to me. But you come back after 3 weeks and you've definitely forgotten something. So these kinds of note features are really, really helpful when you have a more complex workflow and when you have multiple projects in flight. And then over here on the right, you can get access to the dashboard. You can change the color scheme. I like the evening because I think it's like nice and actually kind of calming. This is the whole of the interface, though. I do find it a little bit sparse. You can actually even use a focus mode where these parts on the side just go away and you're just left with just the text. The focus mode is meant to help people just kind of get into that flow state with the text and it's just you and the words and you're writing and everything feels good and the whole rest of the world just melts away. I think it's like really romantic, but for me, I grew up with much kind of more complicated and fiddly writing environments, and something that's too bare just kind of makes me feel like I'm, staring into the abyss, and I freak out. And I don't like that, and so I like kind of having some more menus and buttons and things that kind of anchor me back in reality. But you might be different, so I think that's completely legitimate. I do like the fact that Novlr is web-based because it becomes available on any device that you own. I don't think that the interface is particularly great on the phone or the tablet, but you can write that way. Everything syncs seamlessly because it's all handled on the back end. And I also like the fact that Novlr does have in offline mode. So if you lose internet access because you're out and about, maybe you're at a coffee shop or something, and the Wi-Fi goes down, or maybe you just load your novel and you're out the door, you want to write, you can write when you're offline. Novlr will save all that stuff. It'll sync it back up when you go back online. I think that's a really good feature to be able to have. Right. The bad part about being a web-based service is that it kind of locks them into that service model for billing. Because they're doing so much on the back end, they don't necessarily have the ability to lock you out of upgrades to the software. And because of that, they're going to make you pay for it. They're going to, make you pay the subscription fee so that as they add more features to the software and you automatically get those features, you're getting that through the payment of the subscription. So it's $10 a month or $100 a year. That $100 a year, it ends up being something like $8.33 a month. That's not a terrible price. I mean, it feels like it's a little bit high compared to something like Office 365, but it's a more specialized writing software. The customer base is going to be much, much smaller, so it's going to be more expensive. And the honest truth is that for $100 a year, if you're pretty serious about writing, that's a fair amount. Especially because it does include those updates, right? If you're writing, as your main hobby, $100 a year is actually fairly cheap. I do still wish that there were a perpetual license option. Whether or not that would be feasible for the developers, I mean, I just don't know. It seems like that's not a way that they want to go, and I respect that, even though it's not really my preference. Right? I said earlier that Novlr has lots of features based around the psychology of writing. You really see that in the dashboard through these goal systems. So you can set up daily goals, you can set up monthly goals. Novlr will also let you know when you've hit like a writing streak. So it'll track, say, how many days you've written in a row. And I think the goals are actually really, really sane because you notice here these goals, they're not like 8,000 words a day, right? Which I think, like, people who aren't writers, they think like, oh, you must write like 15 pages a day, and I kind of say that's really funny and kind of soul crushing. The goals are much more realistic. Like 200 words a day. Like that's not necessarily a terrible goal. 500 words a day. For a lot of people, like that's really ambitious, depending on how long you're writing per day. And I really think that the Novlr people get writing because they've got a goal here for just write something every day. And I think that Novlr can be a really powerful tool for some people who need to get into that discipline of writing and just write something every day. If you're the kind of writer who is really motivated by those goals, by setting those goals, meeting those goals, like seeing those goals happen, and you say, oh man, I just wrote 11 days in a row, I can go 12, and that gets you to write just one more day. If you are coming up on a goal and you're saying, oh man, my goal for today was 200 words, I've hit like 187. How hard is it going to be for me to hit, that 200? It seems more doable. It gets you to write just a little bit more. And I think that's fantastic. So, in those ways that the writing environment can, it can motivate you to write more. I think that is absolutely fantastic. The Novlr software is optimized around manuscript writing, so it's really limited on the layout. You can't do maps, you can't do illustrations, you can't do headers and footers. So I don't know that for some people it's going to work out. If you want to do something like, YA stuff where you want illustrations, you want to do sci-fi stuff, you want to do some kind of like alien language, it's not going to work that well. If you want to do just like a straight text ebook publication, that might still work. But otherwise, you might need to dip into something like a Microsoft Word that's going to have a lot more layout, right? Um, in the end, overall, I think I would give Novlr a limited recommendation. I don't think I would use it as my primary writing environment right now. I could kind of imagine it. I would actually put up with the subscription pricing because I've got the screenshot of their product roadmap, so I know that updates are coming, and that makes me a little bit more willing to pay a subscription. One of my big deal breakers right now is that I'd like to see a standalone app because Novlr gets really lost in my taskbar. It just gets merged in with all of my other like Chrome stuff, and it doesn't stand out. So I have a lot harder time just like coming back to my writing when I'm doing something like research, and that's not good for me. And that's really my deal breaker. But otherwise, if you really like the tools that let you tap into the psychology of the writing, you think it's going to motivate you, you think that you're going to write a lot more. I think that Novlr could work really, really well. I would say try their free trial. What have you got to lose? Maybe you really like it. So I hope you try Novlr, and I hope you'll write a lot.